Thank you for being here on a Saturday morning, no less. Hopefully you're here because of the provocative title of How to Win Your First Hackathon. I want to start just, if we could do a show of hands, who here is a student at Durant? We have students in the audience. And can you keep your hands raised if you would identify yourself as new to Web3? Okay. And can we keep our, I like the so hands, and keep hands raised if you would describe yourself as a potential entrepreneur, aspiring entrepreneur? Okay. Excellent, excellent. Okay, this presentation is for you. So my name is Dimitri. I am the founder of Marshmallow. This is my co-founder here. He'll feature later in the presentation. I built a financial literacy app for kids, built on the Solana blockchain. Usually I talk about that, and I'm excited to speak about the product and its applications, but today I'm going to do something a little bit different. I'm going to spend the next 15 minutes or so sharing the cookbook, the recipe to how we went from idea to hackathon winner in record time. Don't be afraid. A year ago, I didn't have a crypto wallet. I had no exposure to Web3. And today, Marshmallow has won 2 grants, one of them quite prestigious. I have capital to finish its development, and I'm lecturing at Athens DAO. Right? So incredible things can happen in less than a year. This is a magical space in terms of acceleration, agility, how dynamic it is. I'm also proud to admit I am what you would call a non-technical founder. I can't code. I certainly can't code in Web3. I can't write a smart contract. I can't interact with a blockchain. But that needn't be a hurdle to innovation in this space. Non-technical founders can have great ideas, and they can lead successful teams. Solve real-world problems. You'll notice there's a little asterisk. There's a caveat here. I should kind of qualify this. This is one winning recipe. This is not the only winning recipe. This is something that I believe. If we seek to solve real-world problems, we leverage our experience, especially if you're new to Web3, and if you're a non-technical founder at that, chances are most of your experience is going to be exogenous to the ecosystem, right? So that's where my advantage lies. But by doing this, by ideating in this way, by thinking about the real world, there are 2 kind of corollary and I think profound benefits. Number 1 is we avoid solution-first traps, right? Something that unfortunately is very common in any innovation ecosystem is finding a solution before you've identified a problem, right? This is a really cool way of doing something. Now, how is this useful? That makes it very difficult downstream to find product market fit. But in the real world, we know our problems. We've experienced that friction firsthand, right? So we're, I think, better set up to have a well-defined market once our product is live. And also, if we solve real-world problems, I think we have the opportunity to onboard new users to crypto. And of course, crypto is a network effect technology. It's strengthened by more participants. And if you can make a case that you can convert Web 2 to Web 3, that becomes very attractive in a competitive landscape to investors and to judges. For us, this was the real-world problem that we wanted to solve. Financial education for kids sucks. Piggy banks are outdated. You can see some of the kind of points we wanted to tackle. I come by this fairly honestly, this insight, because I was a financial planner by training, and I'm also the father of 2. I'd be remiss if I didn't give a shout out to my son, Odysseus, who's right there. He's very much the reason for this. Sometimes he refers to himself as the prototype, or Marshmallow number 1. Crypto is not a spectator sport. This was the best piece of advice I received for getting started. That came from you. This is not an ecosystem that rewards passivity or purely academic pursuit. It rewards doers, right? And I don't think that should be surprising if we think about crypto being the technology of agency, of advocacy, of standing up and being measured on chain, of self-sovereignty. We get involved. So get off the sidelines as quickly as possible. How do we action that? What can that look like? First of all, put speculative investment aside. Start thinking about utility. Even some of the coins that are already in your wallet, if you're at that stage in your journey, might have some secondary utility. Explore that. Can you stake them? Can you vote with them? Can you participate in rewards with them? If you're not already part of a DAO, become part of a DAO. Learn about governance. Jump in. You can see some kind of logos here. I've tried, when appropriate, to identify a couple of protocols or applications on Solana that might be useful. This is the Realms logo. Familiarize yourself with that. This is the most powerful governance toolkit. X, Twitter. When we talk about engagement, of course, the mother of all engagement happens on X. Right? This is where the crypto world goes for its news, where it goes for investor relations, where it goes for promotion. Right? There is no substitute for this. Right? There's no alternative. And it's not too early to start developing that persona for yourselves, whether that's as an individual, as a founder, or as an application. Right? It's a grave error to enter a competition or a hackathon and to not have thought about this first. Now, the formula to popularity, which I describe as to be interesting, be interested, this formula hasn't changed fundamentally in 3,000 years. There's a lot of research that confirms that people that are popular, whether online, whether kids at school, whether students at university, or founders in an ecosystem, they are interested about others. When you're interested about others, that's what makes you interesting. If you want to be heard, amplify the message of others. Start dialogues, start replying, start retweeting, start quoting. That's how popularity builds. Leverage local, access global. Crypto has this amazing quality to be both small and large at the same time. It's a highly individualized technology, and it's also global. I think that duality holds also when we think about geographies. Local communities is where entrepreneurs are going to find support. Attending today is a kind of a first step to this end, right? It's your local community. That's where you're going to find your peers. That's where you're going to find your colleagues. But it would also, I think, be a grave error not to reach a little further afield. Crypto as a currency, as an exchange of value, allows us to collaborate and buy services from all over the world. This has unlocked the global and now biggest labor market in history, right? Countries that were previously very difficult to interact with, you can now access talent in these places. As a quick example, Marshmallow was ideated in Greece, workshopped in Thailand, designed in India, developed in Croatia, and branded in the US. That's a competitive edge. Don't ideate and develop in Ayaparashkevi, right? Don't limit yourselves that way. The logos here, again, these Gibwork and Super Team, for those who aren't familiar, these are labor marketplaces. This is a way to source, pay for talent. Composability is more important than discovery. This should also have that same caveat. I will say that this is something that I personally believe. It's a thesis that I believe in. Not everyone might agree. What is composability? Composability is creating an application from existing functionalities or components. This is possible in crypto because of the prevalence of open source and because of the kind of hyper-specificity of many protocols. So when I was first thinking about Marshmallow, I realized that there are elements of Realms, Tiplink, Gibwork, Lulo, Bonk, and Sphere kind of built into it. These are opportunities to borrow functionality instead of having to build net new. Again, the corollary benefit here is it avoids redundant innovation. When things are moving so quickly and the landscape is redefined, on a daily or weekly basis, It's hard to guarantee that someone isn't building what you're building at the same time somewhere else, better, cheaper, faster, right? So when you can, before you spend any resource, whether it be time or money on development, see who else has done it better. For us, as a quick example, being a financial literacy app, we had a savings component, so we wanted to include yield. We wanted to manufacture yield inside of Marshmallow. We could have written the code to do that. We could have developed a marketplace to do that. But that's all Lulo does. It is an expert in that. It is a yield aggregator, right? Even if I could build it instantly and for free, it would still be better for me to try to interact with Lulo. Why? Because I get to stand on the shoulder of giants. They have a massive following, a massive distribution network. And by using them, a Marshmallow user becomes a Lulo user. That's very attractive to them. And that opened the door to meaningful dialogue where they can support us, they can resource share, we can maybe even co-ideate at some point. Attend Hacker House. Again, this is another one that I would say that there's no substitute for this. An in real life Hacker House event, whether you go for a weekend, a week, a month, to create with other crypto entrepreneurs is an incredible experience. Everything in crypto happens quickly. I think hacker houses are fast, even by crypto standards. It's business incubators on steroids. The amount that can be achieved in a very brief period of time is frankly quite incredible. And it does something else which I think is equally important. Even though X is this incredible volume of information, it can have a risk where our choices and who we follow create subconscious bias. If you're developing in DeFi and you follow people in DeFi and you follow who they follow, you can have an entire thread or an entire stream that is just giving you DeFi news. And so you think that's what everybody is doing. And you're ignoring the rest of the ecosystem. When you show up at a hacker house, quite naturally, you see where the gaps in the market are. You see what people are working on. What are those pieces of friction, right? What's of interest? You see trends. You can spot patterns, right? So I think it's incredibly valuable. And of course, you spark collaborations. Marshmallow went all the way to Island DAO, to Koh Samui. And that's where the idea crystallized. That's where I found some development help to finalize the pitch. That's where I got meaningful feedback. Scale your applications, scale your victories. This one should be self-evident, but you still see people doing this kind of in reverse order. Right out of the gate, you shouldn't kind of shoot for the moon, right? Scale the competitions that you enter. There are bootstrap grants. They are smaller in monetary value, but they're easier to win. They tend to be regional as well sometimes, so that's something you can lean into. And they are made for earlier stage ideas. Sometimes you can win these grants on a pitch deck alone, right? And not only does that bring in capital, which is useful, and prestige, but the most important thing, it brings in an incremental piece of validation. And so now you have to think about the judges at some of the bigger, and we have here the Radar Hackathon, an incredibly big competition. They may be reviewing 100 applications, 1,000 applications. Every competition, every small grant you can win going in to a bigger hackathon is a small piece of due diligence that those judges don't have to do because someone else has looked at it. Someone else has validated it. Someone else has awarded it, right? So winning builds momentum. Welcome feedback. Pay for it, even. This one is the hardest one to do because this is a mindset shift. I think founders overestimate the value in a product that comes from the initial idea. The truth is, not very much. Because value, I believe, belongs mostly to execution, and execution gets better through iteration, and iteration is sparked by feedback. Tell your story to as many people as will listen. Story audience fit comes before product market fit. And the great thing about it is it's free. I would argue that if you can't convince a family member, a friend, a schoolmate to be a teammate, if your story isn't engaging enough for that, what's the chance that you will convert 100 users, 1,000 users, 10,000 users? An audience, of course, they serve other functions, right? Audiences can become gospel spreaders. Audiences can become your teammates. Audiences become sources of talent. Right? Keep telling your story. Now, the pay for it even, again, we're developing in a unique ecosystem that even provides feedback as a service, right? One of the places that you can do that is, we see the Dean's List logo there, and actually you can see this is it happening. Marshmallow paid to have a bonanza, which was a pitch deck review. This was people in a physical space in Thailand, but also remotely, whose task it was to give me meaningful and constructive feedback, right? I want to give a quick shout out to Chris. We see him in the photo, and he's sitting right there. I remember as he started this, he like provided this context. He was like, okay, this is Marshmallow. We're about to go through it. No compliments. We don't want to talk about how cute it is or any idea that's working. I just want to hear how this is broken. It still rattles me to hear that, even as I say it, and yet that's what made it so valuable. Don't spend too much time hearing the positive stuff. You know that. I mean, arguably, if you're developing and you're giving your time to something, you believe in it. Ask people to meaningfully critique, kindly but rigidly, your idea. Thank you for that loving cruelty, Chris. Don't be afraid, part 2. I think it's very natural to have kind of a social anxiety when you're starting in something that you don't fit in, right? Am I crypto enough? Am I crypto native enough? Will I use the right words? Will I use them in the right way? You won't. I don't. I still can't. And the truth is that in a lot of social situations, nonconformity has a downside. But in a competitive environment, that dynamic is inverted. Differentiation wins. They will like you for the ways that you are different. They will not like you for the ways that you are the same. Right? So lean into what makes you you. Right? What is it, your lived experience? Is it the way you communicate? Is it the way you're applying your technology? To be memorable, be incomparable. And finally, next steps. So it feels like a big journey. So how do you start? And of course, the kind of fortune cookie wisdom here, it starts with the first step. Do something. Don't do nothing. And if I could recommend something very simple, follow Marshmallow on X. Marshmallow_XYZ. Scroll back to the very beginning. Read the story. Decide for yourself which parts, which steps might be applicable to your project, and steal them. Duplicate them. Get in touch. You want a copy of the presentation? DM me, right? And anyone that does will also be whitelisted to be in the first beta testing cohort. Ideate, pitch, build, ship, and hopefully win. And maybe a year from now, give this talk at the next Athens DAO. And that's it. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Dimitri. That was very inspirational and powerful. Are there any questions?
Hello, very inspiring story. I want to ask you, which was the most difficult part of this journey?
That's a very good question. So I think there's two answers, and one I kind of gave a bit already. So from a mindset shift, the most difficult is really walking into feedback. Like that vulnerability of being like, I built it, now break it. That's very hard. In terms of what's the hardest to action, it's the engagement piece. It's the time you need to spend to reply, to interact with other protocols, to make it a priority. It feels like you're giving your time to others, and yet it has this kind of feedback and amplifying effect. But that's hard to do. It takes a lot of discipline. I personally had a great coach on this character here, Dimitris Stubos. And he would always say, like, this is going to return tenfold. How many replies did you send today? Right? He gave me, what was your number too? 50. Right? And you're like, no, I'm a founder. I got to be focused here on products. And he's right. That one is exceptionally difficult. But even if you don't do 50, just don't do 0. Right?
Testing.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Hello, over here.
Oh, hi.
Ah.
Hi.
So, I don't have kids, but I do have parents that require explanations for crypto like they are children.
Okay.
I was wondering if you have put any thought to the other side of the horseshoe for the aging populace that need the
Yeah, they
simpler
need the help.
explanation and kind of same walkthrough as I would guess kids would.
Yeah. I have, but it's interesting. It's come up as I pitch, and it's great that you use the horseshoe. It's like it really is the kind of continuum meets like kids and parents. I have to admit, Marshmallow has been built with kind of the 8 to 13, 14 kind of target audience. When we looked at demographic trends, to me what was really powerful is that 76% of all crypto users are between the ages of 25 and 35. I know what comes next, kids, right? We're just kind of like trying to develop for that upcoming cohort, right? So that was the thrust of this, but I agree with you, maybe there's a V2 of this, or maybe kind of a sister brand that goes after that market too. I think it's a great idea.
Thank you.
I think,
Hi,
hi.
Federico. I provide legal services to Realms, but I also have a law firm that has a DAO on Realms.
Oh, excellent.
And I've been in international law firm operations for more than 24 years. And I've been in crypto since the Bitcoin paper in 2008, 2009. But, so I have kind of a clear vision of what a supranational law firm needs to look like. And the foundation of it is a DAO, okay? Mm-hmm. But what I don't know, and what I'm having trouble with, is how do I integrate the various applications that would provide a metaverse law firm, right? And so I'm curious about how you went about identifying the solution providers to provide your integrated offering.
Oh, wow, okay. I was curious where your question was going till the very end.
I felt I needed to give you enough background
No,
to
it's
focus there.
it's wonderful context. So it was, yeah, I wish I had a kind of structure to answer for you. Off the top of my head, I think they belong to kind of 2 categories. One is experimentation. So this idea of just jumping in. These happen to be the first protocols that I used for my use. So I learned about Lulo, for instance, because that's where I have my stable coins generating yields, right? So it was a different path that introduced me to that came from kind of my personal experience. Some of the things, of course, I wasn't going to kind of touch at random or by chance, and there I went to mentors, to people that were in the ecosystem a lot longer than I was, and I described, I have this idea, and I think there's a kind of permissioning level. There's parents and kids will want money, but the parents have to decide and say yes or no. You say that to someone who has a background in Realms, and they say, wow, that sounds like a kind of family level governance. Right? It's like, oh, okay, so then let's go there, right? So half of it, I think, just stumbled upon, and half asked the experts.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. So when you're building the product, I'm curious, so what's in your mind regarding business models? Have you thought about like how you make into a business, like how you make money out of this?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. In fact, that should have been a whole slide. I will add that next time I give this talk. Yeah, it's okay, I think, to have uncertainty around business model, especially when you're early. This, I think, dovetails into the feedback piece. You don't want to be so rigid that you're not open to real-world experimentation and see how people are using it. But certainly you need to demonstrate to judges in a competitive way that you've addressed this question, and I think meaningfully you should have at least one kind of path to monetization before you start spending your time, right? For us, we saw a couple different paths. Number one, because we're dealing with real currency, we're dealing with real value, and we're also dealing with this idea of a trade-off between liquidity and yield. We want to teach kids how to save by giving them incentives. So the incentive would be you lock your money and it generates yield. If you scale that, and if Marshmallow is now managing 100 piggy banks or 1,000 piggy banks or 10,000 piggy banks, theoretically it has some non-trivial value of locked stablecoin. So could some of that yield actually pay for the app itself? Can it offset some of the transaction fees, and can it be a meaningful revenue stream? So this was one thing we're like, this could work. There are some Web 2 versions of this that do aspects, but I would argue not everything that Marshmallow does, and they are subscription model. So we do have a business model that all else fails, we can kind of like take that. Of course, we could do a hybrid of those things. And then we took it kind of a step further to say, okay, but what if we further disaggregate our community into Web 3 and Web 2 users? Maybe there's a Web 3 business model and a Web 2 business model. So the Web 2, they might be more subscription-based, and of course the other one might be more transaction fee and offset. So we've thought about it, but it is early days, so I don't know where we're going to end up. One of the things that we're also investigating, which is part of the business model, as you know, there's a lot of foundational money in the ecosystem. Because Marshmallow runs on the rails of USDC, we want to have a conversation with Circle around, would they be willing to help? Would they be willing to offset some of the transaction costs? Is it meaningful to them as an onboarding mechanism to get parents to put USDC in their kids? You know, so those are kind of the thoughts. I hope that answers it. I know that was a bit
Absolutely.
scattered.
Thank you so much.
Hi. Having worked with kids myself in the past, teaching in itself is a fine art. I'm just wondering what the backbone or what it looks like when it comes to the teaching kids aspects of it and how you approach that.
Yeah, so in a way I did a bit of a disservice by just saying kind of financial literacy, because you can interpret that as kind of curriculum. It's not that. This is, and again, pointing at my co-founder here. So literally, Odysseus, he turned 8, he's like, I want to have an allowance, I want to have a piggy bank. They were kind of real things that, as a parent, and in a conversation with my wife, is how do we get this off the ground? And we started just thinking about, okay, we don't love the piggy bank as a concept because you're asking kids to save, but that savings doesn't grow. You would never teach an adult to save like that. You want to create an incentive structure, maybe even a disincentive structure to model the right behavior. So we're like, well, this doesn't work really well. Then I thought about kind of my financial planning background. And I thought, when you build a financial plan for a person, for a company, for an estate, it always has 3 components. It has goal setting, right? What are you saving for? How much do you need and when do you need it? That then helps you navigate certain trade-offs, whether liquidity, yield, risk, reward. And then the third one is how do you actively contribute to that? And again, those things seem to be missing from kids. So what Marshmallow is a toolkit that addresses those 3 things. So it's a double-facing UI, one for kids, one for parents, where kids can set goals, can navigate a trade-off between spending and saving by moving money between 2 buckets that have 2 different behaviors. One bucket doesn't grow, one does. And also a kind of a la carte list of not chores. We call them jobs. They're things that they can do outside of the expectations of normal family life to generate money in addition to their, right? And what it's done, and oh, he's gone. For a couple months, we just like ran it on this sloppy Excel, right? And I would just kind of like notionally create these effects. And Odisea started saying, how much of my money should I lock in? I was like, this is great. Like, I just want the conversation. I want to catalyze this conversation. And we would lock some money in, and then it would grow, and you get excited about that. And then, and I hope he's okay with me sharing this, one day we were at the zoo, and we went to the gift store, and he's like, oh, I want to buy this stuffed giraffe. And I was like, oh, cool. Do you have the money? He's like, yeah, I had money. And my marshmallow. And I was like, no, but it's locked. And he's like, what? And again, it's like, that's the conversation I want to have, because if it wasn't locked, it wouldn't generate the yield. So it's a toolkit that I'm hoping just generates enough dialogue around these concepts. Maybe at some point, with a little more thought, there could be an educational component to it. Even for parents as well, like maybe something that's conceptually easy to me, won't be for other parents. Maybe they could use some resources. So, sorry, long answer. Get me off the stage. Okay.
Maybe time for one more.
I might be jaded based on my background in venture capital and private equity, but I was curious, what kind of issues did you come up with or were addressed at the beginnings, considering you're mentioning yield, real money, children,
Sure. Landmine,
lots of red
landmine.
alert, flags. I'm curious. Thanks.
Yeah. Yeah, this is obviously, this is a big part of the early conversation. So the architecture right now is built in such a way that it is abstracted. So it's not actually in the kids' names. We're not dealing with connections between Web3 and any kind of fiat banking system. It's actually best understood as a subdivided wallet. It's almost like the parent holds a wallet that can send to different parts of the wallet, different buckets. What the important piece is to have a kind of ledger that can understand this behavior so the kid can think of moving money and what it does. But the ownership never changes. I'm always the custodian. And so people ask the question, well, okay, but now Odysseus has money not in his savings, which is locked, but in his spending. How does he access it in the real world, right? Very good question. But I would point out that even if you have a traditional piggy bank, it's not like when your kid says, I want $5, you go and you smash the piggy bank and you take out the $5. What the parent does is just says, I'll buy this for you, and then I will mental now 5 of that is mine, right? So we're doing that. So it's this kind of exchange between two levels of a parent-held wallet that creates, I think, enough of a structure.